Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good night, whatever you guys want to say. Today is going to be a lengthy video on week 2 of quarter 2. So try and make this as short as sweet, but it may go a little longer. So first and foremost, please, this week more than any, make sure you guys read these slides before you teach it. Obviously, I'm sure you guys all do, but this is it's kind of in depth. There's a lot of IB, new terms, new curriculum, new kind of system that goes within this. And this is going to be also our first project. So just a kind of a warning, I would make sure that you guys read it and make sure, if you have any questions, just ask it before we go too crazy here or before the day you teach it. So in case 28, topic 28, first and foremost, we'll start with just the agenda here. So it looks like design brief, obviously IB design cycle, design mod project intro. We're going to talk about those concepts, and then they're going to start working on what we call criteria A. Well, IB calls criteria A. Criteria A will be due, or you'll be doing your interviews on Thursday, Friday. And then you will be going over criterion B, and that'll give those students who are waiting to be interviewed something to do, basically to work on the next kind of stage. So Monday, Tuesday, same kind of deal as we always have. Here's the agenda for this specific one. Sharing and greeting, like always. We're going to go over what a design brief is, the portions of them, IB design cycle itself, what that looks like and how it compares to the Project Lead the Way design cycle, and then the actual new project. So you can see that there's a lot of topics here, but once they kind of get their feet wet, they'll take off, trust me. So basic sharing and greeting. Vocab, design brief itself. Self-explanatory criteria. We use this word a lot in a lot of different variations, so it might be important to kind of make sure you harp on that. Just a standard in general. Keep going. So we talk about design brief. Talk with design brief is a written plan, just to kind of introduce it, and then I show an example of a design brief, and then kind of break down each of the components within that design brief, talk about what they are, and then even highlight. Katie kind of gave the idea that we should kind of highlight each one of these things from the example, which I thought was a good idea. So I copied and pasted them down here, obviously, and then described what those specific pieces mean. Target consumer, all the way down, all the way to constraints. So that's pretty straightforward. IB design cycle, this is kind of where it starts overlapping and starts going into a little bit new for the students. So you'll have the design process here. Obviously, this is what we're introducing, or what we've introduced in the past. They should already know what this looks like and what this is, so we should be good there. Then we go into comparing the two. So this is the IB, this is the inner circle of the IB design cycle. So if you look at it, this is a simplified version. The next one we'll actually talk about what the strands are, but just talking and kind of talk about how the differences, what's different, what's the same, how they relate. Pretty straightforward stuff there just to start conversation. And then this is the actual full design cycle. It can be a little overwhelming. Trust me, it's not as bad as it looks. So just reiterate that and just make sure that the kids aren't overwhelmed by looking at this thing and have to understand now that we got to know another design cycle. It's not that it's new. It's just a different approach to proving what the other design cycle, Project Lead the Way design cycle does. So don't worry, your teacher will coach you through this process, and we're going to break this through in this project very detailed. So it starts with criterion A, B, C, and then D, and this is just going through that process. These are the strands, basically, that are in each of the criteria. And so the very first one that we're going to talk about is criteria A, inquiring and analyzing. Today we start the first project. We just talk about what, and ask the students in detail what documentation they think is most important in this step, after you kind of go and just literally say what these strands are, explain and justify the need, identify and prioritize, and just kind of very intro level stuff. And then we start going into the actual project, and start and describe it. And within description, or in the description of me going through the whole project, I also go over criteria A in depth. So have you ever looked into a product and thought to yourself, why do you have design like this? Just to kind of give them a little starter, just a thinking kind of topic. This is what the project, the design modification will be. They're basically going to, and as you can see here, they'll be choosing any product around their house and modifying a specific part of the design that you feel could be improved. Not to be confused with reverse engineering. This is basically them taking a product, finding something they don't like about it, and modifying that one piece onto it. So an example might be a coffee cup with a handle that is too small. They're just making the handle bigger. They will also have to, and I would make sure that this is really clear at the beginning, they're going to have to recreate whatever object they choose inside of Onshape. So I wouldn't do like something that's really extreme and they don't think that they can handle, measure out, all that jazz. So it'll be quite intense if they just have to take their own readiness level into account. So then it starts talking about locate the design mod details. If you look back at Schoology, again, this can be overwhelming, but we put in here the design template or design brief template. So I'll show you that real quick. Just kind of goes through a blank document, allows them to fill in, which they will be required to do. So to have them make a copy of this eventually down the road, I put a design brief example in here, and that's the one that's also in the slideshow. But this is what I'm kind of referencing to right now is the design mod project details. So if I click on that, this goes through in depth what each of the criteria cover, what the kids are expected to, the students are expected to do within each criteria, as well as their due dates. So it says criteria A, obviously criteria B goes through, and if you see in yellow here, a design brief example, that's why I put that design brief example in there. It says to go back into Schoology and look at that example just for reference. Before you, I wouldn't even, I would just talk about criteria A. I wouldn't go crazy and start trying to go through this whole entire thing. It's just overwhelming. So at the end of this, you'll see the IB rubric here as well as inside of Schoology. So when you click on it, it basically goes through an in-depth rubric, which we will discuss in our TLN meetings, of how we grade IB in this world and what kind of criteria. These are the strands specifically that we grade and we assess. So going through that, I'm not going to go through that in depth because we're going to go through that in the TLN. But that's your copy. Within this, you're going to then continue. So it says document. I would just go over criteria A. Hey, this is the project. Here's what we're going to do, and we're going to talk about all those pieces right now. So this is also your first IB project. For the IB project, you have to complete what was called criteria. There's four criteria. Within that, there are strands. And we'll talk about that in a sec here. But it says criteria A consists of a research and a one-on-one interview with your teacher. So you'll basically be putting these guys into breakout rooms, which I'll talk about in criteria in this other topic here. But basically, that's just what you're reading. They have to do the research. They have to go through all these things in the next few slides here that walks them through criteria A. So these are the strands. So each criteria in the IB world is made up of strands, and these are the strands that I kind of highlight. Again, you'll see criteria A. This blue is the only one we're going to go over for criteria A or for this part of the project. And then I go through and highlight each one of them. So criteria A, again, is always inquiring and analyzing. In this one, the first strand is explain and justify the need. So these are some of the things that they should be able to answer through their research, through their, everything that they're doing right now. They should be able to say, what is the problem you are solving? And always have justification. So yeah, the problem, who says it's a problem? Where is this a problem at? All those kind of things that are revolve around those topics. The next thing is identify and prioritize the research. And this kind of goes with primary and secondary research. So what do they have to tell you will help you with your design? And the secondary, what did you find that will help you with your design? Make sure you reiterate this portion of it. What did they tell you that will help you with your design? They can't just, we have a lot of problems with students kind of going off on the way. Yeah, they told me it was a good idea. Well, that doesn't help you in your project. You need to be thorough, and you need to ask the right questions to your to the person that you're interviewing. So to kind of go through that, in primary research, you're going to see I talk about what primary research is, what you actually do with it, and again, primary is just interviewing someone like physically, and obviously they can do it via Zoom or somebody in the family, whatever the case may be. And then secondary research is everything that they find online, in this case in the virtual world or in books or in whatever. So this is just them going through and justifying basically who says it's a need, why it's a need, just proving that their problem is a problem. Analyze existing products is the next strand. And you'll see analyze existing products. What existing products did you find that are similar to your solution? And what existing components did you find that will help you with all of your design? And the last piece is develop a design brief. And we've talked about obviously before what a design brief is. And I just talk about, make sure you put all of these pieces using the template that is obviously here. They're going to be filling in this with their own creativity. There is not a set design brief. I want them to be creative. I want them to go through and say, who do you think the client would be? Who do you think the target consumer is? They're the designer. I want them to make a problem statement. I want them to make a design statement, all that kind of stuff, just to get practice into making a design brief as well. There's some hidden slides here that basically go through the strands for your kind of use. If you want to give that to the students, you can, just to kind of, have another checklist. It's perfectly fine. I go through all 4 strands here. Totally up to you, but I just put them in there hidden originally because I think it might be a little too much for the students to look at. And then I give them a little checklist that Criterion A interview is on Friday, on Thursday for some, and complete a design brief, do the primary research, do the secondary research, and have answers and justification for the strands that we just talked about. So 1, 2, obviously. If you look at this bottom 2, I put that they cannot or can but are not required to make a Google Doc. This is an interview, so it's a one-on-one. You ask questions, they respond. Can they look at notes? Yes. Can they have something in their hands? Yes. Can they look at and create a document? Yes. They don't have to submit anything though. You are basing your evaluation, your assessment on their responses. And trust me, you'll get into the hang of it after about 4 or 5 kids. You'll know within 30 seconds whether they did all of these things just by experience. So that's it for the first day. That's a lot, I know. But if you go back now, I went through all these pieces. If you go back to Wednesday is just more or less a work day for them to work on criteria A, to do those interviews for primary research, to do the secondary research, to answer all those questions. Again, just time. And then on Thursday, Friday, they are going to have their interview. So within topic, you'll see right here, I also put a decision matrix template in here, which we'll talk about in a sec. But within this topic, same kind of thing. We're going to talk about what criteria B is and what you have to do there. And then while students are working on criteria B, they will be going over, you will be doing your interviews for criteria A. Another little sharing and caring. Annotations was a big thing because this is now brainstorming sketches and final sketches, all that jazz. So I thought it was really important to talk about annotations. Criteria, again, I put it there again because now we're going to talk about different types of criteria, which are going to throw some kids off. So criterion B. I did the same kind of thing where I pulled out criteria B and focused on yellow in this case. So this is developing ideas. So now that they have the research done, they proved that a problem is a problem. Now they need to start brainstorming ideas and solutions to that problem. So the first strand is develop design ideas, and that's where they're going to make their 3 design sketches. These are rough ideas of possible solutions of your design. They should include detailed notes, what is happening in your sketch, and make sure that that is occurring. The next strand is develop a design specification, and this is where they're actually going to figure out their criteria for success. So what exactly should the solution be able to do? How will it be able to succeed? And then what kind of, and I try to say, think of it something that's measurable, right? Something that they can actually say, yeah, this is testable. Yes, I can figure out if that's working or not working, or what I did solve the problem or not. The next strand is present the chosen solution. And this is kind of going along with using those. You have to be able to decide what your chosen solution is. So this is where I kind of incorporate the decision matrix. They need to have at least 4 criteria to help you select your final design. I obviously put their 3 brainstorming ideas here. They come up with their own criteria, again, at least 4, and their own ranking system, 1 through 5, 1 through 4, whatever. They just need to be able to tell you what their ranking system was. And then steps for using a decision matrix, again, in the column headers, identify the criteria, list the problem solutions in the ideas column, create a rating scale. Everything I just said just kind of goes through in a checklist for the students. And then develop a planning drawing diagram. So this is where they're taking all those answers now that they've decided, obviously from the decision matrix, the one that they want to choose or a design they want to choose. They're going to create a finalized annotated sketch of their solution. All I want as far as dimensions is height, width, and depth. They don't need to go in crazy and figure all the other dimensions out. They can, but as far as documentation, I'm not requiring it to happen. You can. I'm going to tell my students it's going to be very hard for them to draw this cup that's on my desk inside of Onshape if I don't have all the necessary dimensions. So They can, they don't have to though. So fully annotate the drawing, aesthetically pleasing, and these are all just hand still. There's nothing in Onshape for any of this. This is all just a hand drawing, and I put an example of a final design. They should have parts. They should have, and we're going to go through an assembly here, obviously in Criterion C when we talk about that. And before they go on break for Thanksgiving, I'm actually going to give them like a little warm-up assembly and go through all that, and we're going to take a break from the project and return to it after Thanksgiving. So just a little heads up, this is just the handwritten final design, not a actual Onshape anything. Another little checklist, so complete the 3 brainstorming sketches, make sure you include the annotations, list of criteria for success, see slide 15, and again just goes back and talks about what the criteria of success looks like, decision matrix, and then a final sketch, and then breaks down what they should actually have. So then criteria A interviews, this is kind of what I do. You can change this to whatever works for you. Criteria A requirements, you be put into, and what I'm going to do is put all my kids into individual, breakout rooms, and then they are going to basically, you are going to visit each room, have your interview, ask your questions, and go from there. And then I also put in the strands, again, just for clarification for you guys, for anybody, to again go through anything that goes through this stuff. So I copied this one. I shouldn't have copied that one, so I'll put that back. But I digress. The only other thing that I didn't talk about was here's the template for the decision matrix itself, and they're just going to make a copy of it again. Stole this from my project Lead the Way. Might want to use that. And then the modifications for criteria A. So what I have them here, if you look at this in Schoology, I have identified the strands, and I'll show you by editing it what those strands and what the rubric looks like. It's the exact same rubric we gave to the students, except now, if you look at criteria A, I broke them down and already gave this to you so that you can grade them. We'll talk about how to grade and what the grading looks like inside the TLN meeting again, but this is already here for you, so they don't have to submit anything in here. I'm not making my students do that. It's totally up to you. If you want to, that's fine. Maybe that little document that they're using for reference, if you want to have that. I just want somewhere that I can grade and put those, obviously the rubric inside of Schoology. So that should be pretty close to it. There's one other thing that I was looking at. Criteria to perform the interview while there's being an interview. You should be working on criteria B. Okay, I think that's it actually. Yeah, so it goes through and they should be working on Criterion B within that system while you guys are doing the interviews. So while others are being interviewed, you should be working on Criterion B. If you have any questions, you can just ask, obviously, you guys. That way they're working while you are doing your thing. If you have any questions, guys, be sure to reach out, obviously. Good luck, and it's a lot, I know, but just make sure that you guys get all your questions answered as soon as possible before you do this, because it's going to be overwhelming for you and the students if you're not confident. So if you have any questions, please just holler. Thanks.